There, for once, we had one certainty, which was that we weren't certain. So that's one of the other things that really appealed to me in the project. And so we made the choice to develop the company with design partners. So we signed on a blank sheet of paper a promise of we're going to do everything to make you successful on this topic, and we learn at the same time as our clients on the ground. Now, I'd love for their primary motivation to be environmental issues. That matters, but it's not the trigger. To put it as it is, the trigger is purely economic. Manufacturers, that's where the potential is strongest. They face Asian competition that markets products with a functional set comparable to theirs, 30 to 50% cheaper. This competition is becoming unbearable, so they decide to take a premium positioning. So a premium positioning is premium product, superior quality, but being premium is also a notion of service quality.
Hi, Charles.
Hi, Antonin.
As we speak, I think you've just closed the round with Asterion in the lead, Kima following, and the startup studio that's been with you since the very beginning.
Exactly. So right now we're closing a 1.7 million round with obviously Asterion here present in the lead. And yes, indeed, followed by the startup studio OG, which was there for the pre-seed round. And indeed, we're also lucky to have Kima participating.
Well, let's get straight to the point. Concretely, if I have a defective washing machine at home, I call a Fnac Darty technician who comes to replace it. This machine then goes into the truck of this technician. What happens to it today? And in your opinion, what should happen to it?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you're starting with the ground level because Revalue is a boots on the ground company. We built ourselves on the ground. We did hundreds of visits and interviews to master the problem we're going to talk about now. And indeed, the topic you're pointing your finger at is the topic of the product in use or at the end of its life. It's very different from managing a new product. So here we're in a case where your washing machine doesn't work anymore. Indeed, the technician, well, we can take several examples. He brought you a new one and leaves with the old one, for example. And so at the end of his run, well, this technician brings back, or rather a delivery guy actually brings this washing machine back to the warehouse. And so there, Fnac Darty, as part of its Beyond Everyday strategy, well, they made the choice to give a second chance to products that have potential. And so that's where things start, with determining the potential of that product. And where things are very different from new is that products in use or at the end of their life are all unique by definition. Unlike a new washing machine you buy on the internet. You look at the model, the reference, whether you order it from your couch or we order it from mine, we're going to receive, quote unquote, the same one. Except that afterwards we didn't use it the same way. It doesn't have the same dents, we don't have the same leaks, we didn't stuff the drum the same way, so each use, wear and tear makes each of the products unique. And that's where the complexity of life after the sale starts. And so that's the problem we're tackling.
We'll come back to the problem in a few minutes, but before that, maybe let's talk about what you did before Revalue. This isn't your first company, I believe?
Yeah, no, I'm a co-founder of Bonitasoft too, which actually recently changed its name. That goes back a bit. It was in 2009, yeah.
And so in 2009, you start this company. It's open source software in the middle of a financial crisis, right?
Yeah, it was indeed. We had raised quite a bit for the time. The history even goes back a few years before, because actually I had cut my teeth as a software engineer at Bull, a company that is actually rising from its ashes right now.
Thanks to AI.
Thanks to AI, notably with a core business they had in high performance computing. And so, well, as a result, we were working on a project together with Miguel, notably, and Rodrigue, who are my other co-founders for Bonitasoft, and we were working on an open source workflow management topic that we had deployed all over Europe on behalf of Bull, which was making its transition to the service business. And so the product was working well. And as a result, there was a very big potential to disrupt in 2009 for once on a recurring revenue business model. At the time, it was very new and on an open source business model disruption. And so the three of us created the company in 2009, indeed, with a series of fundraising rounds that allowed the company to grow quite fast.
And you CTO at that time?
And so I started as CTO indeed. So we very quickly grow the team to a pretty big team at the time. That's how it worked. There you go. So we did several fundraising rounds with well-known Parisian funds, Ventec, Auriga, Serena, BPI.
And gradually you changed roles. I believe you were COO and CEO in this company.
Yeah, so the company's journey was exciting, 15 and a half years in total. I went through different roles indeed. a hyper-growth model that was pretty heavily funded at the start, with hyper-growth in revenue, company size, and number of employees. And we honestly achieved pretty incredible results for 5 years in a row. And so we were really in this triple-digit growth strategy. And then in 2015, which was a slightly more difficult time, we had again achieved very good growth, but not what we had planned. And the models at the time predicted, pretty heavy staffing level to prepare for future years' growth. And so we had to do a very big restructuring of the company, which we managed at the time with Miguel, really major. And so that's when I changed roles to, take on a major role in the restructuring and get the sales and marketing activities back on track. So that's when I took over operations.
So 2015, COO.
Right. Late 2015, transition to COO.
And then?
And then, 3 years of restructuring the company to make it profitable pretty quickly in cash and EBITDA for good. And then, after 12 years, yes, so our VCs were there. We did a capital transaction with the entry of a private equity firm that replaced the historical VCs. At that point, Miguel decided to step down. I took over as president of the company in 2022.
And that experience didn't put you off VCs?
No, that experience didn't put me off VCs. We had very good relationships. Honestly, we had great VCs at Bonita. In fact, during the difficult times in 2015, they were there to support us. In a super important board meeting, we had to decide whether or not to keep the company going. They supported us. They even financed us to get through that rough patch. And honestly, we had the pride and pleasure of paying them back when the storm had passed. So no, not put off by the VC world. Indeed, I think it's necessary in a certain number of businesses to allow the best ideas to be executed to their fullest potential.
And so you leave in 2024, and at that point, what do you tell yourself?
Yes.
The Revalue, when exactly did you start it up again?
So Revalue was early 2025, not a very big break actually, because indeed late 2024, the end of Bonita Soft, very well advised at the time. So with people supporting us, notably Amélie Faure, who had been by our side with Miguel since the beginning of the adventure. She's a friend today who gave me very good advice at that point. So I did a pretty incredible thing that I recommend to all entrepreneurs taking a break. I spoke to 60 people I didn't know in 60 days. So
oh yeah? And Amélie advised you?
Amélie advised me to do that. And so super interesting. Quite a few VCs in the mix, because you have this advantage seeing so many deals, so many people every day, that to get back up to speed, because as CEO or COO of Bonita Soft for 15 years, you see lots of people all the time, but you're still a bit in your own business, in your market.
But did you still unplug it a bit, or did you do the 60 days the day after?
No, I did 90 days of house renovation. So I sanded my hardwood floor, things you do when that you don't have time to do usually. So some personal stuff for 2-3 months. And after that, I did a 360 review with all my former employees and VCs to find out where my strengths and weaknesses were. In fact, the VCs participated in that too. I called Xavier and Claire to ask their opinion on the matter.
And what did you learn then?
I learned, I rather confirmed things I already knew, because I have a pretty direct communication style. So people communicate with me in a pretty direct way too. But it's interesting at those times to also know what you want to do next, with what values you're launching, and with what grounding you're launching. And so, that allowed me to really put on paper concretely. I even wrote things down on paper, the things that mattered a lot to me. And so, that's also when I decided that I wanted to start again. And as it happens, what to start again on was already pretty clear to me for 6 years. It goes back to a story from a Corsican summer in 2019. We can talk about it if you want.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, let's go. So after the 3 years of restructuring Bonita, we did, 2019, honestly, the company was profitable in cash, in EBITDA. We had put the company back on track. It was working well. And so we did things that you do that you don't really do when you don't have much time. And so we had done a whole bunch of employee benefits. We had rethought travel, all those things. I was already a little bit, hooked on climate issues. It was starting to bug me. And I went on vacation that summer with my family to Corsica, and I had bought a book that works for all audiences of all ages, especially for my daughter who was younger, who was 7. And we read that book together as a family, and we made some decisions. I can describe the scene for you.
What's the book?
The book is Zero Waste. So it's about things you can do on an individual level. It's a first way to get started. So it allowed me to explain to my daughter, who's especially for my daughter who was 7, and we read that book together as a family and we made some decisions. I can describe the scene for you.
What's the book?
The book is Zero Waste. So it's about things you can do on an individual level. It's a first way to get started. So it allowed me to explain to my daughter.
Brilliant, right?
I don't have the author's name in mind anymore, but I still have the book.
I know her well.
And so, well, we decided as a family what we were going to do. So we changed a lot of things. I sold my car. I bought a bike. We cut down our meat consumption, which was purely historical, traditional. You know, we ate meat every day. We couldn't even say why. It was just because that's how it was. Anyway, we changed a whole bunch of little things. And that day, it planted a seed in my head. I thought, if one day I get involved in a big project again, it will definitely be related to the environment. So the seed goes back to that moment.
And how do you go from the environment to circular then? And I'd be interested to understand the link with the startup studio, because the idea came from them, I think, at the start.
Yeah. Well, so the first seed was that I wanted it to be in the environment. After that, I was pretty open about what kind of environmental impact I could have. Then I had another slightly self-centered thing, but I'd been doing B2B automation software for enterprise productivity for 20 years. Suffice to say, my mother still hasn't understood what I did for the first 20 years of my professional life. And so I thought, well, I'll do something that my kids, my wife, my mother can understand and write on the back to school forms. So I also wanted to do something much more concrete. And so, well, during this period when I had time and with this logic of meeting people I hadn't seen in a long time, I took my pilgrim staff and went to trade shows, but as a visitor this time. And it turns out there's a show in Grenoble where I live called Tech and Fest, which is quite well known, where the year before I had moderated a roundtable on how to scale a company internationally. And I went as a visitor, and obviously I spent my day in the corner dedicated to tech for the environment. And I met Hugo, who was running the OG Ventures booth, which is the startup studio with which I ended up starting Revalue. And so, well, we chatted with Hugo. I asked him to introduce me to the partners. I went up to Lyon to meet the partners. We had a mutual human connection, at least, I mean, for me, for sure, where I thought, really, that the guys are great. They have brilliant ideas. They shared the projects they were studying for, which they were looking for entrepreneurs to take over. And among those projects, there was Revalue. And Revalue spoke to my heart right away for a pretty strong reason. Beyond the fact that, well, it was in my thesis. Everyone knows what a product in use is, or, you know, whether it's an industrial product or a washing machine, we're in the world of industry in products. So that I like that a lot. Obviously, it was in the environment, but there was also another very strong aspect that matters a lot to me. Being an entrepreneur, I obviously want to do projects that do good for the environment, but I also want to do things that just work, period, regardless of the subject. And so it's a project with a perfect alignment. The more successful Revalue is, the better off the planet will be.
And we're gonna talk about it, but can you just go back to the first few months with them? When you talk about Revalue, what does the project look like? Is it slides? Is it a first POC?
So the project was already an exploration phase that had started. So with quite a few meetings already done to clearly define the problem. So the problem was already relatively clear. Obviously, we were still at the stage of looking for solutions. So I finished the exploration with them. There was indeed already some documentation and quite a few call notes.
So those are the visits and calls. In preparing, I read about 250 visits and calls that you did with the startup studio.
Yeah, well, some of them had been done before and some I did myself afterwards in collaboration with them, obviously. So yeah, it's a studio that is very hands-on. You know, they go out there. So the very hands-on DNA of Revalue also comes from OG.
And so now, who are you going to see and how do you approach the problem? What is the exact problem?
So the way the OG startup studio works, so their thesis is environmental transition in industry. So these are people who are highly connected to the industrial world. So they talk daily to a whole bunch of people, decision makers or operational staff in the world of industry. They do field visits on anything and everything, kind of all the time to stay connected to the market. And when a problem, an issue emerges, they decide to dig into it. And so they launch what we call an exploration phase. And so in this exploration phase, there's an entrepreneur who takes the lead and who organizes more in-depth field research to bring out a solution. And the day we feel that the problem is well understood and that we have an idea of a solution to solve it and that the market is there, obviously everything that makes up basically what you present to an investment committee, well, then I went to an investment committee and an impact committee, which was independent actually at OG, which validated the project and therefore confirmed the pre-seed fundraising.
And how do you refine your understanding of the problem then over the months?
Well, mainly on the ground. And we made a choice for the company's development, which was actually very different from the one I made at Green IT Associates. At Green IT Associates, we're in a super mature market that dates back to the 70s. I mean, 1970. Here, on the other hand, we had one certainty, which was that we weren't certain. So that's one of the other things that really appealed to me about the project. And so we chose to develop the company with design partners. So we sign on a blank sheet of paper a promise of we're going to do everything we can to make you successful in this area, and we learn on the ground at the same time as our clients. And so that's what we did, notably with Fnac Darty, which led us to the success we know today.
And so in B2C industrial reconditioning with back market and others, it's a market that has exploded and is already quite competitive. How come we're so far behind on B2B?
Well, typically that's a key element of our positioning. In the B2B world, it's extremely difficult because the products are much more complex in small and medium batches, and decision-making, especially regarding their circular potential, is much more complex. Capturing the source, so getting access to the product, is also very different from a cell phone or a soccer goal on a site at a sporting goods retailer. And so that's where Revalue is going to bring very high added value, with a focus on the complexity associated with these small and medium batches in particular.
So concretely, how do you go about it, and how do you work with Fnac, for example, or others?
Yeah, so actually we work pretty much the same way with everyone. So first we really understand the problem on the ground, but then there are also things that are changing a lot. We're still a young company. What we were doing a year ago is quite different from what we do today. We've improved a whole bunch of practices. So there's a first phase of understanding the problem, which today we do in a multimodal when. There are a lot of things that are involved. In particular, that's part of the challenge of shortening as much as possible the time to understand the problem. And today, the biggest added value we bring with Revalue is the ability to decide. So in a product flow that's in use or at the end of its life, there are a set of decisions to be made at key moments. Is this a product I'm interested in? Do I bring it back or not? Especially when we talk about the subject of industrial products. These are RVs that are very heavy, complex logistics. So organizing a product return already costs hundreds of euros. So we better do it for products that are worth it and absolutely not do it for products that aren't worth it. Otherwise, we eat into the margin substantially with products that aren't worth it.
Every bad decision can be extremely costly, and so that leads to inaction.
And there you go. And so that's the main barrier. When you ask, especially manufacturers, why they don't go for it, well, they don't really know how to go about it. So there's a bit of a consulting approach that will be part of Revalue's assets. And then there's another one, which is even if they have an idea of how to go about it, they say the bar is high. You know, there are a lot of things we do by hand today, which are anchored in the minds of experts, done by Robert, who has 25 years of experience and who can tell you in 20 minutes if a product is worth it. But the day Robert isn't there or is at another site, well, Robert isn't there, we don't do it. Right. So we're going to objectify and digitalize these decisions at key moments and intervene as early as possible in the cycle on the product flow to avoid, paying fees or committing to products that aren't worth it, and also to capture all possible sources, so potentially high-value products.
What drives them to act, your clients? What is it that made them maybe not act until now? I mean, you mentioned it's complex, but today, what drives them to act? Is it environmental commitments? Is it that there are value creation flows to go after?
Well, I'd love it if their primary motivation were environmental issues. That matters, but it's not the trigger. To put it as it is, the trigger is purely economic. We've seen quite different realities on the ground. We can take a few examples, right, of players in the value chain. Rental companies, it seems pretty obvious. They make a capital investment in equipment. The longer they rent it out, the better their profitability will be. So they have an obvious interest in extending the product's lifespan. So it's really an approach centered on economic profitability. Distributors play a key role. They're in the middle of, product distribution. So they're in touch with all the manufacturers and with the clients. So they have access to clients, but they don't really know the products they distribute since they didn't manufacture them themselves. So they have an extremely strong economic interest because they handle all these products. It costs them money to handle them, but today they don't monetize it or not enough. And then manufacturers, that's where the potential is the strongest. They're facing Asian competition that markets products with, we could say, a comparable functional set to theirs, not the same quality, but still a comparable functional set, 30 to 50% cheaper. These people start over every year with a revenue to rebuild to reach or exceed the previous year's revenue. And this competition is becoming unbearable. So they decide to take a premium positioning. So a premium positioning is a premium product with superior quality, which is already the case for the European continent most of the time for products made here. But being premium is also a matter of service quality, and this competition is becoming unbearable. So they decide to take a premium positioning. So a premium positioning is a premium product with superior quality, which is already the case for the European continent most of the time for products made here. But being premium is also a matter of service quality. And here what their clients are asking them, they say, well, okay, I'm buying a premium product from you, but I want the premium service. If I break down, you fix it quickly, you have spare parts for a long time. And so all this activity of maintaining an installed base in operational condition, replacing spare parts, repairings, after sales. So everything that's after sales, European manufacturers on European territory.
It feels like, I don't know, 15 years that we've been talking about the product service system. In practical terms, could Revalue allow them to offer usage rather than selling a product?
Well, some already offer usage. Others have intermediate approaches with concepts like standard exchange, which still isn't that common in the industry. Today, when you break down, you basically have the choice between a brand new replacement, which often takes 2 or 3 months because of on-demand, just-in-time production, plus material and parts shortages. It takes a very long time to get new industrial products. Or else there's classic repair. This classic repair requires, well, sending the product to the warehouse, doing a diagnostic, everyone being available, fitting it into the workshop operations. You have to remember that these people have operations. It's not just like a delivery guy arrives and that becomes their priority, you know? So that takes a lot of time too. And clients are in the dark. They don't know how much it's going to cost them since it's based on a quote. So some manufacturers are launching standard exchange offers. Thanks to Revalue, they identify and diagnose the equipment remotely, and the manufacturer commits to sending them the equivalent of that equipment in a standard exchange with the same functional set that fits right into their installation, since we've identified and qualified it remotely. And there we drastically reduce not only the delivery time for the client, which is critical for keeping operations running, but we also smooth out workshop operations, meaning that in the manufacturer's workshop, well, they dismantle the pumps they've recovered from return flows when they have time. They refurbish them, well, restore them when they have time. And when the request comes in for a standard exchange, well, they're ready to ship either by rebuilding the equipment from parts, or they had already prepared a stock of equipment ready to ship. The client is back up and running in a few days. So in terms of criticality of keeping operations running for their clients, it's an absolutely differentiating value-added service.
I'd like us to go back to what you offer today and what you could offer tomorrow. You mentioned the complexity of decision-making. Concretely, what does your technology allow you to do? How does it help simplify this complexity?
Actually, that's our core.
What's going on under the hood?
Well, that is the core intelligence of Revalue. With the growing number of clients that we have the chance to work with, our software is becoming smarter and smarter based on how our clients make their decisions, the ability to delegate those decisions to them, do proper diagnostics, identify products as reliably as possible. It allows us to make these decisions objective and even outsource them. So today, for some of our clients, we can offload to a mobile app the decision of whether a product is of interest to us or not. Whereas before you had to send a technician out or have the equipment returned. So we've allowed them to model and maintain these decisions remotely. And especially for industrial products, these decisions are extremely complex. We're dealing with very complex products. There's a whole bunch of technical parameters that have to happen in the right order. And so we've developed several things to have this superior expertise. We capture the intelligence of these experts because this expertise does exist, you know? So unlike the B2C world where the complexity is lower, in the B2B world, it exists, but it's locked in the brains of a few people. So we extract it from those people's brains.
Who are these people?
Most of the time, it's workshop operators who have this expertise. And actually, kind of funny, we've visited, well, as I said, we're very hands-on. We've visited lots of sites in auto recycling, major appliances, pumps, people who make radars. And we ask, and when Robert isn't here, what do you do? Oh, well, we put it in a corner and wait for Robert to come back. So it's absolutely not something you can outsource and even less offload remotely today as expertise. So we capture this expertise through different means, notably with, thanks to AI, with conversational agents or in a multimodal way. AI allows us
to... You do interviews? Does he tell you what he does? Do you observe him? How is this intelligence captured?
Well, we do both of those things. We also give them the means to express themselves directly in connection with Revalue, with our tool. So we have a conversational agent with them, which they can write to, talk to. We go there, we do audio and video recordings. We capture lots of data sources that allow us to really understand how things work, how products are qualified. And with the intelligence we've built with our historical clients and the two major use cases we handle today at Revalue, which are maintenance on one hand and sourcing on the other, we're able to automatically produce decision trees that correspond to their operations. And we give them control so they can maintain them, make them evolve. Because there are two aspects. One is being able to set it up. And then there's another, which is continuous improvement on these decisions. Because reproducing decisions from the field is a first step. Making them even more efficient is a second step.
And that it would be complicated for them to do. Has none of these players been tempted to develop an in-house product?
Well, to date, no, because actually in the industrial world, first of all, digital topics are often a bit further removed for them. And concretely, these are people who have an operational flow logic. So these are people who are immersed in operations. That's their job. And here we transform this operational logic and their knowledge of the field into a decision-making logic that still requires a little bit of, I'd say brain power, but that's the beauty of the AI era for that matter, is that we can delegate this brain power to an AI. Still, you have to master in its depth and verticality the complex issues around everything related to circularity. And so that's notably one of Revalue's big assets, is that we stack up use cases and client examples, and that means that for the next client, we're always stronger, and for our existing clients, we can always offer them an improvement.
And Robert, on the ground, doesn't he feel like he's helping build an AI that's going to replace him?
No, because that's the part of his job he doesn't like. Robert, what he wants is to get equipment back in working order. And so this decision phase is a lot of responsibility that he carries on his shoulders. If he makes a mistake, it has a direct link to profitability, to margins of operations. And what he likes is taking equipment that wasn't working and making it work again. Being directly dependent on, that's the expression they use, at the tail end of the truck with the delivery guy arriving. And then at that moment, you have to be available in the middle of the driveway to look at products, or stick your head in the washing machine, or shove your arm into the pump to know if it's working. That's not the part that amuses him. What he says is, once you've sorted it well, now I want to do an active revaluation, which actually makes a lot of sense. We're pretty happy when we are valued ourselves. Well, we're happy to revalue equipment. So he clearly prefers doing the part after the decision in the workshop.
Can we go back to the customer traction? You mentioned Fnac Darty. Are there other clients? And where are you concretely? Are you still at the stage of prototype, or are you in the deployment phase?
No, the product is used in production. In fact, we've done online communications, notably with Fnac Darty, right, which is all the French warehouses, on a national scale, that do second life at Fnac Darty on the major appliances family using Revalue.
You're talking about how many warehouses?
We're talking about 30 or so warehouses.
So these 30 warehouses are today equipped with, concretely, what does that mean? Does it mean that the technicians on the ground use the application on a daily basis?
Yes.
Revalue?
Exactly. Those operators have Revalue on their phones, and so they identify, qualify, direct the products they receive every day. So in the tens of thousands per year, several tens of thousands per year, they qualify them thanks to Revalue to send them or not to refurbishing or dismantling for the secondary activity.
And are there other players in France who use your application?
Yeah, well, we have other players in quite different fields. We work quite a bit in automotive deconstruction. We also work in pump type equipment like the ones I mentioned earlier. So pumps in critical environments. So equipment that's super important for maintaining operational condition. And there you go, on a variety of use cases, sourcing, maintenance. And then we have other discussions underway on very varied topics around furniture, medical equipment, IT equipment. So the beauty of Revalue is that, for that matter, we wanted to be, in terms of tech, agnostic of the product and of the player in the value chain. Even so, obviously, in terms of how we're going to address the market, we have priorities, but the product works just as well on any type of product.
And in France, are we rather advanced on these circularity dynamics compared to other European countries, for example? Do you have competitors in other European countries?
Yeah, so in France, we're rather advanced. Germany is quite dynamic too. If we talk about Europe, obviously the most advanced continent on the subject is Asia, contrary to what one might imagine. But since they produce a huge amount over there, well, they got interested pretty quickly too. For now, we continue to send them our products, so they're happy. But now we're going to keep the resource here thanks to apps like Revalue.
Do you see the shift from, how should I say, the mainly environmental issue to the understanding that it's also a lever of sovereignty.
But now we're going to keep the resource here, thanks to apps like Revalue.
Do you see the shift from, how should I say, the mainly environmental issue to the understanding that it's also a lever of sovereignty?
It has become a completely strategic issue.
What type of interlocutors do you see?
Well, notably all the manufacturers who make equipment. Poate Correctly, those who so in the consumption in the concession correctly, and see Ardovation go it for him. What are the could see quasi positive issues? See, comment as eval drotten down put down and vind dice issue. Clears de la on screws on avant-garde is so different. It's building up. Actually, it's been brewing appears now for here, and it's the having factors that makes things actionable. And now, concretely, things become profitable when you automate them, like Revalue is proposing to do. And when it's profitable, there's no more debate.
I while preparing, I read that there were 62 million tons of electronic waste every year. What happens to this waste today? And if you do your job well, in 10 years, how will things have changed? Can we reach 100% circularity?
Well, 100%, I think, like with anything, that will be difficult. It's worth noting, though, that electronic waste is the best managed in the world. So whatever stat you look at on the subject, you have to realize they're kind of best in class. So
exactly, there's the most value to be captured.
It's also because that's where there's been a huge volume with the with retail trade. And we all have tons of digital devices at home. So the government is prioritizing it, notably with regulatory measures. It's going to improve quite a bit, but for now, there's still a lot of sorting activity. Today, we recover value in two different ways. At Revalue, we're focused on what we call the high end of circularity. So everything that tries to keep the product for its original use. A washing machine, a car, a pump remain a washing machine, a car, a pump. The second stage of the rocket that we're interested in is the component stage. So if we can't keep the car, we'll try to keep its exhaust pipe, its drivetrain, its engine, its clutch, and the last scale is the material scale. In the world of electrical equipment, of course, we try to make the most of scales 1 and 2, but there's still a lot of recycling with at least the separation of rare materials, but we fall back to the material scale. So the challenge is to get away from this material scale as much as possible, to keep the components and products.
And so in the end, what will be left that we won't be able to reuse?
Well, I think plastics, that might be a bit complicated. I'm not a specialist in the material scale, so I won't commit too much on that, but the plastic part seems complicated.
Regulations today are rather supportive on these issues. Could they evolve in a good direction or, on the contrary, in a bad direction?
Yes, they're rather supportive without being incredibly dynamic. Then, in all transparency, starting a business with the hope that regulations will be the driver, that's not what drives me today. I think there's enough interest and market dynamics independent of regulations. It's not regulations that it'll be an accelerator maybe, but clearly the intent is already there in the industrial sector. Everyone we talk to tells us they want to do it. Their number one hurdle is getting started. To use terms I've heard in the field, the step is too high. And so the step is too high for two reasons. The first is they don't really know how to go about it. And so here with Revalue, we bring them a solution on how to go about it in a very concrete way for the two most common use cases, which are the product in use case with fleet management and fleet maintenance, or end-of-life product cases with a module we call sourcing. So we bring concrete solutions to problems they face in the field on real existing activities. Mm-hmm. And the second big issue Revalue is tackling is time. The approaches that exist today, you can categorize them into two big blocks, if you will. There's the very traditional SaaS approach, where concretely we create highly configurable products where we shift the responsibility to the client side, saying, oh, well, I made you a software where you can configure everything. You're good to go. Well, it takes 12 months of configuration and people who specialize in software to do that. The people I see in the field are blue-collar operators who don't necessarily know how to do that and want to do it even less. I don't really believe in this approach that shifts the complexity to the client. And then there's another approach we've observed that works, but is slow and expensive, which is the full-service approach. So you have specialists in the field who go on-site for 12, 18 months and churn out recommendation sheets at best an Excel sheet with a reporting tool plugged into it. It works. On the other hand, the day after the specialist leaves, nobody can touch anything anymore. So it's not very scalable and it's very slow and expensive. The promise at Revalue is to eventually reach 2 weeks between the moment we decide to launch a project and the moment we have a first version in production.
What scares you today growing this company?
I don't know. I'm super motivated. I'm not driven by fear. I'm not afraid. I mean, there are challenges, but no, I'm not driven by fear. No, I think we have a super innovative approach. We have quite a few differentiators. A lot of people have launched in the B2C market. We're tackling the B2B market. A lot of people do traditional SaaS. We've taken a very different approach to the issue. We're going to commit to results on decisions, on decision delivery, results on customer onboarding times. We really want to make commitments to manufacturers to show them that, yes, circularity is possible at a cost and in a time frame that meet everyone's challenges. We're going to commit to results on decisions, on decision delivery, results on customer onboarding times. We really want to make commitments to manufacturers to show them that, yes, circularity is possible at a cost and in a time frame that meet everyone's challenges.
What happens today when industrial equipment breaks down, and what are the consequences for the manufacturers of this equipment?
Well, when a piece of equipment breaks down, that's when the customer-supplier relationship has to play an extremely important role. Statistically, that's the moment when a customer is dissatisfied with the service their supplier is providing them, at least in this B2B world, that the chances are highest for the supplier to lose their customer. It's when we're dissatisfied with that relationship that we say, oh, well, since I'm not happy, if I'm going to buy new equipment, well, I'll bring in the competition and see who I get this equipment from. So for our industrial clients who supply this equipment, it's a key moment, and one of the benefits of Revalue is to equip these clients with a digital tool, Revalue, which allows them to register their equipment in fleets, to be notified when maintenance is due, to be able to manage breakdowns when they occur, so they have an immediate tool at their disposal that allows them to start handling a problem or a need. And so that is an extremely strong lever for customer loyalty for our industrial clients.
So basically, you're a marketing tool.
We're not a marketing tool, but in any case, it plays a role at the start of the buying cycle, whether it's a repair, a new pump, or whatever.
You allow them to ensure continuity in the customer relationship, where before it stopped.
Exactly. That's part of the challenges expressed by our industrial clients, saying they want to create this relationship because they want to be there when things happen. And today it's true that it relies a lot on the customer's goodwill to pick up the phone, call their supplier's switchboard and say, by the way, this happened to me.
When the switchboard answers.
When the switchboard answers, when the person in the workshop is there to take the call, to start getting an idea of what the problem could be. Here directly with a digital tool, they can either handle their problems, their requests completely independently, or at least establish this relationship that allows the manufacturer to interact.
While preparing, you told me that your clients are starting to realize they're sitting on an asset they could leverage. This asset, what are we talking about? We're talking about industrial equipment, but it's located at their own clients' sites, so they're not really sitting on it.
Well, yes, our clients have a strong interest in recovering those assets, which, by the way, book-wise count for zero for my clients. When they've been depreciated on the books, they're often assets that financially are declared worthless, but from an industrial standpoint, they have great value. And so there's also an interest for these industrial players to recover this asset and refurbish it. We don't really suspect the potential value hidden inside these assets, even if they're broken down or at the end of their life, or if a client doesn't want them anymore. I mean, a client of one of my clients doesn't want them anymore, a user. It's a strong interest for our industrial clients to recover them. We managed to reach, some clients have mentioned refurbishment rates of around 85%. So there's a hidden value, or at least one that's cut down by the accounting rules everyone has to follow. Depreciation, asset depreciation, which actually masks the real value of this equipment. So the stakes are really huge.
Maybe one last question. Today, there's a lot of negative communication about Europe. You're pushing to revitalize the European industrial fabric precisely through circularity. Are you confident for Europe, for the European economy?
Today, I'm quite confident in the European economy. In fact, that's part of Revalue's development strategy. We're on national territory to start with, but pretty quickly we'll have an expansion in Europe in the plan, notably starting with our neighboring French-speaking and German countries because they have a strong historical industrial fabric. And besides, I include advocacy in Revalue's missions and even my own. It's part of my personal commitment to the issue. So Revalue is an impact company. We have real mission commitments that we believe in and that I share with everyone who joins the adventure. So in any case, we will carry this message at the French and European levels.
Thank you, Charles.
My pleasure.